So I like how FGO is kind of doing the balance thing right now. You know, they just gave us Ashia Doman, who's a very good quick meme. They gave us Ibuki Doji, who's a really good buster meme. And now we have Vritra, who's a pretty good arts meme. Now, I don't really think it's necessary to go over her hits because she is an art servant. And any art servant with a pulse is going to be able to loop effectively with Castoria. So, I mean, she's got like the 5 hits on her extra, which is pretty good. But outside of that, like, nothing really matters when you have Castoria on your team. Like, she just does so much for art servants that she'll basically carry them even if they have relatively bad hits. So what's more important for Vritra is if her skills are good, and her first skill is a little basic. It's a 3-turn arts buff by 30%, which is, you know, not the greatest. You know, 50% is kind of the mana burst that we're used to, but this is 3 turns, so usually they are a little bit less. But then it also has an arts card gather rate for 1 turn, which is pretty nice, but that's one of the weaknesses of the arts team, is that they don't have any crit damage buffs. So Vritra might not be doing the best arts crit damage, but I mean, do keep in mind this is more just to refund your NP. It's not really to do like big unga bunga crit damage. Although you could slot Waver in there, since 1 Castoria plus a decent art servant should be fine, to where you could throw Waver in there because he still gives 50%, and then the added crit and defense buffs that he has might be worth it in some scenarios. But overall, it's just a really good skill. You know, it's on a 5-turn cooldown, nothing too special. Her second skill is kind of interesting because it gives all allies special damage against divine opponents. Now, it is only 30% again, but for one, this is a unique buff, so it allows you to double buff against divine opponents, but it's also a 30% battery. But I think this is pretty good outside of the battery, right? Because the damage against divine opponents applies to a lot of servants and a decent bit of enemies. So this isn't like, oh, I'm doing extra damage against undead or something. It's just like, this is divine. A lot of the really good servants that we're fighting for these boss battles have divinity, so it does actually help in the long term. This is a useful buff to have. Finally, there's her survivability skill, which gives her guts, which is obviously really nice. It increases her NP gauge by 10% for 5 turns, so you get 50% NP regen basically. Again, this is really nice because not only does she have her own battery, but then she can passively regen her NP as well. But then she also increases the NP strength of all allies by 20% for 1 time, but it lasts for 5 turns. So you can pop this whenever Vritra wants to use her NP, but then if you have, like, say, another secondary DPS on the team, they can pop their NP whenever they want, and this doesn't necessarily go to waste. And it's 20%, that's pretty good. And then do keep in mind that Vritra herself is applying 3 different attack buffs to herself, so she's going to be doing a lot of damage. As far as her passive skills, she does have the 20% debuff resistance from magic resistance, which is pretty good, and then she does have a free 10% buster card effectiveness, which is fine, but she only has 1 buster card, so meh, kind of just whatever, I guess. But her NP is actually really nice because it's AoE and it applies skill seal to all enemies, so you're not going to get any of that annoying stuff like when you're fighting an enemy and they're about to die, but then they pop their dodge or a guts, or they're like 1 tick away from using their NP, so then they use a skill that gives them some gauge. You don't get any of that. You know, she seals all their skills for 1 turn, which is really nice. Reduces the critical rate of them by 3 turns, my bad, and it's by 20%, so that's really, really good, especially because she's an art servant, so you can stack that. So you can basically prevent yourself from getting crit down in a lot of those harder fights. But then the overcharge effect is that she reduces arts resistance by all enemies by 10 to 30%, which again is going to further increase the damage that she does and her allies do, which is really, really good. So overall, Vritra's a very, very powerful servant. And this is kind of what I was saying when I was like, I don't know if you should summon for Ashia or like Ibuki, because we have servants like this coming out, and obviously summon for Ibuki if, you know, you like Ibuki, right? Or if you summon for her, don't feel bad. Same thing for Ashia. But Vritra is very, very good, and she's going to fit very well into Castoria's arts meta team, you know? But if I really wanted to be a stickler, I would say maybe hold out for New Year's, because New Year's is generally pretty hype. And while these 3 servants that we've gotten are all pretty good, they're not exactly broken, I would say. Although, I don't think any of the New Year servants have necessarily been broken, but they're usually like good waifu bait characters. So if you're only summoning for Vritra because, you know, Kumar horny energy, then maybe hold out for New Year's, because that's usually where they pull out all the stops. Like I said, Yang had like the most fan art of any FGO character, and I think she still does. I'm not sure, I haven't double checked it in a while, but it's absolutely crazy what they do for New Year's. They pull out all the stops. But if you want another, you know, dragon, snake, waifu thing, you know, we just had Ibuki. But if you want another one, Vritra is very, very solid. And if you have Castoria, she's going to be very good. but because of all the support she gives and kind of how self-sufficient she is, she'll also be good if you don't have Castoria. So you have like Waver, Vritra, and then I don't know, like another Vritra if you really want to go crazy with all the double buffing you can do. Then yeah, she'll be absolutely fine. But let me know what you guys think about Vritra. Do you think she's good? Do you think she's worth summoning for? Did you summon for her? I got her on my first multi, so I'm big cock ballin' over here. But with all that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys, have yourselves a nice day. Make sure you stay indoors. You don't want to end up like your boy, who's COVID-ridden, can't go anywhere for 2 weeks, you know. So stay indoors. Don't go outside and get sick, bro. Anyway, I'm heading out. Peace. Late, guys.